Hello, Mike. Happy Thursday.
Jack, happy Thursday. How was your 4th of July? Did you guys
Very good.
go? Okay. Did you go to
Very
the
good.
lake or
We
something?
didn't go very far, but
Okay.
I had a few cigars. I tried one
Ah,
of yours, so it was a good evening. Yeah, definitely.
well, we made it to Warren Dunes,
Mhm.
just to let you know, and it couldn't have been more perfect. I think there were thousands of people there, but it's an enormous beach, so we weren't
Mhm.
crowded or anything. It's really nice. It's an enormous beach, really. And the
Mhm.
water was 75 degrees. Still perfect, except I think for some reason, my son helped me with my sunscreen and somehow managed not to put it on my shoulders. So I have been suffering a lot.
Mhm.
I'm still I am not built for sunshine, but it was such a beautiful day. Everyone had a great time. So couldn't ask for more. Worked out great.
Mhm. All right.
And also we could go there and come back at the end of the day, which was even nicer, right? So you can get a
Oh,
kind of vacation
mhm.
feel without having to like deal with all the other stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I am also happy to say that a big backlog of our fabulous episodes, including not yet this one, but most of them
Mhm.
I have just uploaded. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking of doing Friday promos. I have a very love-hate relationship with LinkedIn.
Mhm.
But I think, do you mind if I just put a thing up and say, hey, here's our latest episode. We do this every week if you like to tune in, because we do have viewers, but I
Yeah, I
don't do
think,
that great of a job. I mean, take it or leave it, right? But
yeah,
it's
exactly.
nice to do this. We have almost 40 episodes in the can or something, you know what I mean? Well,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you a story, and I don't want to
Mhm.
monopolize because how are you and what do you think and how's it going? Because I did read your latest post too. So how are you?
Yeah, things are well. I mean, uh, I'm with you on the LinkedIn. I think it goes a little bit against our elitist assumptions that nobody's gonna read our stuff and nobody's gonna watch our stuff. But yeah, maybe there's something
I
to
don't
it.
think it's elitist. I think it's boredom that might be the boredom and lack of interest, probably, but keep going.
Yeah, but things are interesting. Kind of focusing on a few things that are related to machine learning and generative machine learning. So I have a diagram that maybe we can dive into in a little bit, but I think that with the new announcements about the Grok, fanfares and maybe GPT-5 being on kind of like on the horizon, things are things are going to be getting interesting, and then maybe we can spend a few moments like, hey, so what do you mean, right? Like, how are those new models going to be different or better than the current ones? So there's a few things we can discuss.
I mean, I think you're right on point. I probably can save my well, and I want this to be sort of like it's a puzzle, but let me lay something out for
Okay.
readers or
Mm.
people who are not familiar with this or anything, which is fine because I just started. I will tell you, I'm extremely proud because I decided at one point I would just write this article about user experience, which is really what I'm good at. And I haven't written
Mm.
about user experience for a long time. I tend to write about AI and sociology or whatever like whatever I think about, right? But I
Mm.
just wrote this basic AI article, and I was really thankful because it is now at 3,000 readers.
Mm.
So it's been a really big hit, and it makes me think I should write about what I know about instead of stuff that I don't understand at all, like AI. But then, you know me, I'm much more comfortable. I- I'm a little more comfortable. It took me 20 years to write that article, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
In fact, it's a critique of a 30-year-old format. Like literally, this is 30 years old, this framework, right? And I'm criticizing this framework. So it's really that bad. And I think that could be a subtext, right? Of, when do your, well, okay, and then I'll just spill it because we can get to it in a minute
Okay.
because I am on
Yeah.
a freaking war right now, the biggest war that one stupid guy like me could do, and I have a war against geometry now. So now I'm like, yeah, this whole science of geometry is just some art form you came up with and doesn't have anything to do with reality. And that is fun.
Yeah, I have a few kind of problems with geometry myself, and they
Oh,
started
okay. Maybe it's
long
just the
time
dam is
ago.
breaking, right? Like, this thing is fine, but it's not that good. We
Yeah,
didn't figure out the universe with Euclid. Sorry, Euclid, you suck. But whatever.
yeah, my problems are maybe a little bit kind of like more fundamental, uh,
Oh,
which
mine is as
results in,
fundamental as it gets, but
like for example, in geometry, the concept of the point. You are not supposed to define something as fundamental as a point, but then you have another concept line that you say, hey, but it's an infinite set of points, and that's kind of like begins kind of like a kind of not resonate with me too well, and that started maybe in high school or in college, where I have to kind of like pass exams on an advanced geometry, because in engineering school, you're required to be kind of like really well versed in kind of like all these
oh,
Euclidean.
you are beaten to a pulp. And by the
Yeah,
way, you're not alone. Einstein, I'm literally up against Einstein because the problem is
yeah,
Einstein was
yeah,
geometry. You had to
yeah,
shovel all this into geometry. And I'm
yeah,
like,
and yeah.
that's the problem. Like it doesn't work like that, right? So you have to do this weird stuff and then
Mhm.
we have to live with it
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
So anyway,
But but
um,
but but when it comes to when I can transform geometry into a representation that is numeric, then I can transfer a vector to a matrix. Then my problems kind of begin to evaporate, because now I can understand what really is going on much better, and I'm not confined by dimensionality, because I don't have to kind of think, okay, so what's going to be four-dimensional representation, right? So if Rubik's cube is 3D, what would be a 4D Rubik's cube? That's a very difficult thing to kind of visualize for me. But when I kind of do the same in a matrix format, either in computer science or mathematics, things are getting much more clearer to me personally.
well, you're touching, and I didn't mean to start with this, but this has been my week kind of, and an example about AI because it's gonna touch on AI in very shortly, which is it's the Tesla problem. Like Tesla wasn't into geometry, right? He was
Mm,
into how do things actually work, and because of his mania or genius, we have alternating current, which nobody agreed with at the time, right? Was roundly vilified, but yet we wouldn't have this modern world without it. But what I think is interesting about matrices and the fourth dimension, which is definitely the biggest topic, of my thing, is this fourth dimensional model that we control, right? So this is what I'm really interested in, is that we have made up time and we have made things that work within it. And then we kind of pat ourselves on the back and say, aren't we
mm,
clever? And we are, we're very clever, but AC isn't time-based, right? This is all about wavelengths and how things operate at different capacity. It's a system, is what I mean. Like it's not
mm,
one thing; it's three things working together. And I've started to sort of realize there's a little bit of crumbling foundation around computing because remember, we control the clock, right? It isn't in any way natural, this clock. And it just so happens that we're able to double this clock pretty consistently over the past 20 years, right? And that's
mm,
wonderful, except that it isn't it's going to sort of it's going to collapse, right? Like the waveform
mm,
has to have some boundaries, right? And natural boundaries are pretty much my subject. Why are there natural boundaries, right? Why do we not have infinities everywhere? You know, and controlling for infinities is kind of the job of this sort of world. You know, you don't want your computers to crash, right? Like they shouldn't go out of control. Remember when they used to do that pretty much constantly, right? Like memory leaks, you know what I mean? Like they're not, you know, they're like plumbing, you know, they don't just work automatically. They need some foundational architecture, which we're good at, right? But we're not perfect at it. You know, we're amazing. Let's just put it that way. I mean, I'm so much talent, right? Like it's kind of mind-boggling. You know, but again, you're operating on this somewhat shaky ground, and I think our energy thing sooner or later is going to get the better of us because we need to compute with less energy someday. All right, but that was a lot to take in. You can say yeah, and so what?
Well, yeah, on the meta level, that's kind of like the excitement with perhaps the new large language models, where we start kind of throwing you know, things like wavelengths, vibrations, you know, frequencies into a discussion that perhaps we referenced several times in the previous meetings. But then, you know, perhaps the transcript of our conversation can be plugged into a very strong, maybe new language model like the new Grok or the new GPT, and then maybe it's going to create some sort of a maybe annotations to our meeting or something that is going to help the user to kind of digest that information that for us is kind of, we are taking it for granted, right? But maybe it requires an explanation like an intro, right? So I'm kind of excited to see what can be done, right? I know that PowerPoint is probably the worst way to kind of present information, right? But maybe there's going to be new ways invented to kind of augment our conversations and kind of make them a little bit more, I guess, approachable, right, to people at different you know, stages of their life.
If you can replace me with Ryan Gosling, I'm all in. That's all I'm saying, right? Like if that was, you know, our ability to sort of transfer ourselves, because I showed you the Ryan Gosling explains Transformers video, didn't I?
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah. But
well,
yeah,
you should watch it because weirdly, Ryan Gosling explaining Transformers is pretty entertaining. You know, like more so than me saying the exact same words, him saying it is much more entertaining, if you know what I'm saying, right? So we do have this, and my rule that I'm sort of trying to formulate right now is this rule about least effort. So if you can put out the least effort as possible, you have a better chance of survival. So it's a weird kind of, can I say, reframing of survival of the fittest? Like, it's not being warlike, actually, it's being lazy. I think is truly the best way to survive, and that's kind of, I'm going to codify this in a big way, but but it's true, right? And what you're saying is that, well, and I don't agree with this. Actually, I was telling somebody literally about reading a book. I said reading a book isn't about the topic or words in a book. Reading a book is about the time it takes. Because you as a brain aren't ever going to scale. Sorry, you're a smart guy. I know you are, but you see what I mean? You don't scale quickly, right? And I think our scaling is very slow, and the things we can take in a lot of stuff, but we don't have the time that you need to process it. That's why I keep talking about taking long walks or whatever. Like, you can take in all you want, but it doesn't make you smarter, right? It has to be, it's like taking in a ton of food. You don't digest any quicker when you take in a huge steak meal, right? Like, your body will not do it. It just isn't designed to. And I think that's the only, hey, youth out there, take your time. Like, anything that takes a lot of time, watching a PowerPoint isn't because PowerPoints are boring. It's just they take time, and that's the magic people don't have. So yes, I can give you a 1 second summary of us talking. But that isn't the point. Do I make any sense here
Oh yeah,
sociologically?
totally. I think somebody said, and maybe it was Mark Andreessen, or maybe he was just quoting somebody else, but he said that, okay, we have ancient brains that are currently working on creating godlike
Yes,
capabilities in other
exactly.
technologies, right? So, and I kind of I know that there's dangers, and people are talking about AI safety, and if the AI is much smarter than us, there's going to be inevitable problems. But then I'm kind of looking at the books. I'm kind of like, okay, like this is one of the, I don't know if I can show this, but this is kind of like
Artificial intelligence.
Nielsen's AI book, and I kind of always look at those books as kind of I don't want to read it because then I would want to do something, like implement something and like an algorithm from a book like this, and it's going to take me forever. But
Yeah.
now I'm coming to those books, and I am kind of excited because now I can see, I can do this with AI to in an evening, and kind of incorporate that knowledge that is in here. It's now accessible in hours, not in months. So as a former PhD student, I saw people struggling, like for decades on a problem like a question answering system, and that would do kind of like a very, very narrow thing. And it took them like decades. And now, okay, there you go, right? It's kind of like an evening problem.
And okay, Jack, how do you just set everything up so well? So here you go. I will just show you my effort from the day before yesterday, and wait for it. Boom, here we go. And just so you know, let's go into the paper itself is not very long. But what this does, and by the way, this is not something, well, this is what we're going to talk about in a second, right? So as you can see here, Lagrangians are not my native tongue, but they're important, in order to prove something. And so therefore, what I have done is actually come up with a theory where you have a universe that does not use Newtonian law.
And that's kind of true, right? Our universe is
Yes, our universe
not
isn't
using.
geometric,
It's a
right?
good approximation, but Newtonian laws break down very quickly if you are moving very quickly or you have a larger mass. So
Oh,
yeah,
no. This is there is a fundamental force in the universe defined here that defines all other things in this universe. This is the paper that I wrote to just set the stage for the next paper, which is the fun paper, which is it's responsible for everything. But this is sort of the basis is that you have to explain everything in the universe without using Newtonian physics. And the point of all this is, how did I do it? Well, again, I don't know math, right? But what I do know is how I figured it out, which is, I'll just say, clever. Let's just point out, the insight is pretty good. And I'm resting on this insight because it solves all the problems, right? It's one of those things where you get some sort of like, aha, oh, it's this kind of thing, right? Just letting you know. But then I had to spend, like you just said, I had to spend like a day figuring out how to express this. And what I kind of expected, or what I was using this for, is that I used a bunch of models, right? So, I'm using 4.0 or whatever to kind of do the basic lay of the land sort of stuff. Then I'll come up with something, and then and it'll do the math. So I'm sort of saying like, hey, the math, but I'm saying I don't know Portuguese either, but I can talk and it can translate it into Portuguese. So I'm sort of considering this a translator because it definitely knows the math or knows the concepts, and it's this physics. It's 120 years old or more, right? It's 400 years old, so it's not a terribly new concept, this physics stuff, right? But in order to be a good mathematician, as you know, it takes indoctrination and takes years of study to be able to speak in this language. Just like I studied Japanese for 5 years and lived in Japan, and I barely know Japanese. How's that, right? So you also need a good head for it, which might also remove your head of crazy ideas like mine, is where I'm getting at, right? Like once you get better and better at something, you begin to self-select out weird, crazy ideas because they're weird and right, like normalize.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm kind of trying to do something in Japanese as well, you know, maybe like the N5 level of the examination. Yeah, totally with you. I mean, you know, I think I'm waiting for the Google glasses that can translate, you know, kanji.
Well, I will say that the only saving grace, and maybe you'll know now more about my personality, is my saving grace in Japanese is I could tell a good joke. So I learned enough about Japanese culture, and I know enough to get people to laugh at me, and then I could do like George Costanza and be like, okay, I'm out of here. Like, you know what I mean? I don't need to do our level of although I love our level of conversation. That's why I'm talking to GPT, because I'm like, I don't know how to talk in Lagrangians, but you do, and this is what I want to say, right? And then I can get, and so now I'm doing dueling banjos, right? So I just take output from one, I put it into another. And what I've started to notice, well, I noticed a few things, and then I'm going to tell you. So let's say I go back and forth a whole, like, we're talking a day, which in real life would be forever because you'd need to talk to your graduate advisor and get some advice, and they would say that you're an idiot, right? And to give up on this stupid stuff, right? And then you try to get to your graduate, you know, to your dean, and you see what I mean? Like I was lucky to have 1 hour with my Joseph Morgan, my amazing statistic teacher, because I did not understand statistics, but he was nice enough to spend an hour with me helping correct my mental model. You know what I mean? Like if I didn't, like you don't, I just don't pick up something because you told me. You see what I mean? Like it's rough. So I think I'm using this tool in a pretty decent way so far. What do you think? You know, it's interesting, right? Like it is very syncophatic. And I will say also, did you notice, and I'm pretty sure this is going to come up more, it does give up after a while. Like it's sort of like the longer the context window gets, it does kind of wear down. And I'm assuming we're like rubbing up against the universe a little bit. Like it just gets tired of it. You know, and it really does start to make some pretty big errors that look good because you'll perceive them as being good. But then when you look at them later, you're like, wait a second, you just made it nicer so I'd get off your back. So I'm sort of like, that's a pretty nice emergent behavior that, you know, if everybody wants it to be one shot, great. You know what I mean? But if you really want to go into trying to make a new law in physics, it doesn't like these context windows. I think it gets really confused, but we're talking, and by the way, sorry, viewers, I meant to say this. ML people, we love you, but that's a different AI, right? Like that's well-defined data sets. Have a great time, right? Like that's fantastic. This is LLMs, which are really more about, I think, qualitative and Bayesian sense making, if you want to call it that, right? Like this is trying to make sense out of nonsense, sort of, and it's doing a great job, and we love it. But it's very new, and so sorry, Andrew Hinton, you don't get to be a doomsayer because you don't even understand this new AI. I think, sorry, and I also the DeepMind guys the same way. Like, yeah, you have your ML thing wrapped, and you've run out of data sets. Ha, good luck, right? Like there's not that many good data sets that haven't already been mined, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, anyway, you can tell me I'm wrong because this is just the thing that people get easily confused.
I think the sense-making analogy is excellent, right? So this is an engine, right, that has some knowledge, but it at some point is going to reach its limits because those statistical relationships that you are referring to, they become so small that the number of choices is very large, right? So at some point, they would have to have like some sort of a filtering mechanism to kind of like prevent kind of like pseudo-randomness, right? So that's, I think your feeling is the same as mine, you know, like the model will reach its limit. There's also going to be another limitation where the context, to your point, right? It's if it becomes too big, it's going to be introducing biases that are kind of unexpected. So so as long as we stay with this sense-making engine paradigm, then we are good, and that means that we have to do a
Super
little bit
useful.
more. Yeah, we have to do some heavy lifting ourselves to provide relevant context, and maybe, you know, the Lagrangian stuff, you know, the physics, you know, the string theory, or whatever the alternatives we would have to kind of deliver that kind of as metadata to that engine ourselves, because doing that through the engine is just too deep in the infinity of the probabilities, right? The bag, the set is too big, and if you have like 1 to, you know, the probability of being, you know, 1 to a million of, you know, thousands and thousands of relevant scientific papers that the AI probably has seen, but the probability is 1 to a million, and there's like thousands and thousands of those, then the AI has difficulties to pick this up, right? So I think that
But I'm saying yay people, because we actually
exactly,
don't have any
exactly,
problem with this at all, right? Like we
exactly,
easily
yeah,
know when to throw in the towel.
yeah,
But I still think, you know, I'm pro-human, like lean on that, right?
mhm,
Stop doing like this morning, I'll let you know, and I think it's funny because I don't
mhm,
think it's unusual, which is I processed our 3 videos, which by the way, take about, you know, maybe 10 minutes a piece to,
mhm,
and thankfully I can get somebody to go through the video and give me a title, ideas. You see what I mean? Like I use some
yeah,
tools, but a lot of it's just manual cutting and video editing. And part of me says, God, this is really repetitive. Like I really should automate this, right? But I don't.
mhm,
I do it by hand because you know, I don't do it that often. It's not
yeah,
that onerous. You see what I mean? It doesn't require a ton of thinking or anything like that. And I start to realize, and not realize, I write about it consistently, that that's what a job is, right? Like it's good, it's easy enough. But whenever it
mhm,
gets really challenging is kind of where we need to reinforce what a good thing that is, right?
mhm,
Because if it can be automated, maybe sooner or later it will. I actually think that's kind of a misnomer because, yeah, things are actually really challenging in real life and don't make any sense. And you know me, I have no respect for any company because it has no institutional memory. You know, it's just kind of random most of the time that it works. And so, you know, when you go to the CEO and say, you know, why are you guys so innovative? They should say, I have no idea, right? Like we just got lucky and hired the right people at the right time.
mhm,
And that's pretty much all you anytime you see it massively fail,
mhm,
right? Like almost it drives GE into the ground, thank God, right? That you can't just be really good at everything, even though you think you can by making sure that everyone works as hard as possible. That was
mhm,
their mindset, right? We're just going to fire all the bad workers and we're going to be super successful, and instead drove it into the ground, thank God, right?
mhm,
So now that AI is around, I think they keep coming up with the same thing. Like now we just get rid of all these people. And I was like, no, AI, it doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? It's not that kind of a tool. Sorry, I'm still in my skeptical change the world nonsense is kind of silly, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean
yeah,
people don't believe it.
and it's kind of rubbing a little bit of me on me, like kind of the ideas like, okay, so what if, right, we use the AI to create the organizational metadata, right?
Yeah.
Like So if, let's say you have a simple database table, right, and the table contains, maybe like transactions or whatever, right? So on January 1st, the university spent, $500 on pencils. On January 2nd, they did something else, right? So this raw data is very infrequently you are interested that on January 1st, the amount spent on pencils is this amount, right? But if you can start now give this data to the AI, so you can start building the kind of the metadata, like what those pencils might be used to. Oh, maybe we have a new class, right? On kind of like drawing, right? We're
The
gonna
pencil
draw
sharpening class is
personal show.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Right. Then you are beginning to kind of maybe see the story, and that story should be sitting in that database as well, so that if there is a question, what is the performance of the organization? Maybe somebody would like to know, okay, well, I would like to get tenure, but maybe at this organization, they don't have enough pencils, but at the other one has excellent pencil sharpening capabilities, right? Then that is something that the AI will be able to help us out, even though it may not be like human explicit kind of story that exists, but there's a potential for an implicit story to exist that can be retrieved in real time. So that is kind of maybe something that is going to a good thing that is this sense making engine kind of going to give us.
Oh, I 1,000. What you said, and please we recorded this, right? What
Mm,
you've said to me is this is an entire new world. Like we have never lived in that world, right?
mhm.
Everything is hidden, everything is obscure. And even yesterday, to your point, they just paid what, $100 million for somebody to go and make AI gave him $100 million salary or whatever.
Yeah, there's
And
there's
no, and
a
that's
guy
the
in
example of like, you're not going to do anything. You see what I mean? Like, that isn't the answer. Oh, we pay the highest salaries, therefore we are the most innovative. That's
mm,
GE, right? You
yeah.
can somehow game it. And it's like, no, you can't game it. You have to produce a place where people enjoy and get inspired. And that was my last article, right? Like you need to create an entire environment for wonderful things to happen, right? And maybe just so happened that you worked with some this guy had a crush on somebody in the lab and then somehow wanted to impress that person and then somehow came up with a breakthrough about blah blah. You see what I mean? Like all
Mm,
those random things led to their success. They didn't
yeah.
brute force it because we're human, right? We can't. Only people in the Tour de France, sorry, they apparently can actually buy super talented athletes. Just saw this the other day. The Tadej Pogacar, sorry, amazing guy, but boy, $1 billion budget for that team.
Mm,
And it's like, okay, but it's still, you are the perfect size, the perfect shape, you see what I mean? You have the perfect metabolism to be able, do you know they actually for a while burn 1,000 watts of energy for sustained periods of time? Sorry, I'm watching the Tour de France, everybody. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing. It's like,
Cycling is very extreme.
well, and also incredibly organic when you look at it, like it is all about conservation of energy, and it's why it's so different from a NASCAR, right? Where you don't have to worry about gas, but they do. The whole problem with the whole thing is gas, right? Like you don't have any more energy than you can muster. And yet somehow, I mean, it just seems amazing that a human body can do this. But I was watching them go against the winds, and they all turn into leaves and fan
Mm,
out naturally in order to
mm,
create like energy efficient zones, and I'm
mm.
sorry to be such an ecological guy right now, but you see what I mean? This conservation of energy thing is really powerful, in terms of a lot of stuff, right? Like we can't just use, and I'm not even talking about AI, right? I'm just talking in general to be so wasteful with energy. may be another thing that we can learn from this, right? Because the point is that if you go to in a place and you're really happy and you get great work done and you're enjoying yourself and you can earn a living, like that's usually nirvana for most, right? And now the artificiality of a campus is almost gone, right? Because there's not a lot of tenure track stuff left. That used to be the time. Like, oh yeah, take a sabbatical. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing you do in academia. You don't do that now at all, right? Like, hey, can I take 3 months off to really think about something? Yeah, you're fired.
Mm.
But that's what I think, if maybe we saw more about these ecosystems through this data, which I agree, this sense making data, which is why is something successful, right?
Yeah.
What works and what doesn't. Someone just said, they went to a 4-day work week and it's like we get exactly the same or more done than we used to. And now we're all happy because we don't have to like sit around and pretend to work anymore,
Mm.
or whatever. And I think things like that are really interesting and puzzling, and maybe we can work our way there. And then think about, hey, youth, make this happen. Like this is the world we should live in. Don't take our histories to be, this is the Hintons, right? Like, what it was like to get anyone to take seriously the idea of neural nets. You see what I mean? Like, those people at Intel are, we're going to complex instruction our way to nirvana.
Mm.
But no. It just turned out this thing that only does these stupid things really fast, that's the one that wins. Sorry, can I do my conservation of energy again? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, Risk chips won, right? They are the winners. Um, and I think I'm sorry, I think NVIDIA might need help too. That's why I'm putting my bets on analog computing. That's why I think it's a really interesting topic now, because you've already got boundaries, right? Like it already has waveform, right? It's already natural in some ways, and then wow, what could you put in it? But yeah, I don't know enough about it. I'll have to ask GPT.
Yeah. Well, I think there's one more positive kind of coming back to that big hire for 100 million. I think that it may actually awaken a little bit the educational system, because perhaps the kids will kind of
Maybe.
realize, hey, I mean, this is not a Roger Clemens that got $100 million. This is not, Michael Jordan that got 100 million. This is a scientist, probably a mathematician, right? That or a computer scientist that kind
Sure.
of got a little lucky, kind of get hired, in the right place, got promoted, and now he is a big deal that kind of has that kind of market value. So if you kind of look at everything else that is in the popular media, the scientist is never a high value person, right? In the eyes of popular media, right? It's never that, right? It's always somebody else. It's an athlete, or a bouncer in the nightclub, something like that. So I'm kind of hopeful, right? And then maybe to your point, in in France, they are kind of experimenting with the shorter week, and kind of looking into this. I'm reading now that the French actually are very strong in basic mathematics, in mathematical research, which is something that is, absolutely needed, to kind of give us the foundations for a lot of things. The stuff about the Lagrangians, and there's so many things to research. And at the time, a lot of those mathematical breakthroughs were created, nobody even had the slightest idea that they would be applied somewhere, right? And now we're seeing that
Oh
they might be
God,
applied,
sure. I mean,
right?
if it
So
wasn't for Claude Shannon, my whole thing
exactly,
is
yeah,
built on Claude Shannon and Fourier. Well, actually, the entire thing is built on FFT. So
yeah,
my thing is that the fast Fourier transform, I think it has to explain the universe has to work like this, right? Like this shouldn't work. And it's sort of similar with generative AI, right? It shouldn't work. It's a really puzzling
mm,
outcome,
yeah,
but yet it does work, which is even more why would it work if this was not somewhat natural, if you know what I mean? Like it obeys these laws because these are the laws that work, in this universe, right? So I think, I wrote today about, and we both love, Captain Kirk and everything, right? So,
No.
but the idea that we are literally designed to live here, right? Like that's not equivocal, right? Like we are supposed to be here because we are nurtured from this environment, but we're so imaginative that we can imagine somehow traveling near the speed of light to some other place in the universe. And I think my only thing is like, no, you would just die instantly because this is the only place that you are supposed to be. You know what I mean? But it's fun. It's not hubris, but you see what I mean? Like we're very imaginative, which is great. That's what makes this so much fun. But it's also can be very, what's the word? Misleading. You know what I mean? That everything is conquerable and stuff like that, right? That the economy and ecology aren't really important. We'll figure it out. I was like, well, that's the kind of thing that doesn't work out. Like, really, you cannot, don't mess with time, is what I keep saying. Like, it's going to happen this particular way in this sequence, right? And you think it's random, but really you're controlling it. You're making these decisions. These decisions have repercussions, and if you don't take it seriously, which sometimes we don't, and we never have because we never had to. But, if you're taking it seriously, I saw the other day, really fascinating, by the way, that the nutritional needs of a country, can you produce the nutritional needs to feed your population? There is only one place on earth that can do it. And it's a little, I think it's not Bogota, Colombia. No, it's like Guyana, South America. Guyana, something like that. Just makes enough food to have nutritional needs. This is not calories, this is nutrition, right? And that's really interesting because I'm like, no other place could actually feed their own population. Isn't that kind of cool that we're that interdependent on each other?
Yeah, it's kind of.
Well, and of course, the minute you get in a
makes you
rocket
think.
ship, you're screwed, right? Because you don't get anything that you don't bring along with you, including everything needed for survival, which is still quite hilarious. I mean, I don't know how do they get enough oxygen up there for that damn space station to work? I should ask GPT about that one.
Well, I mean, it's fortunately it's relatively easy to make a very high pressure container.
Okay. And you manufacture oxygen, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you have reserves, and you can kind of
good for them.
clean up
All
a
I
little
meant
bit,
is like even that's
scrap
pretty
the
amazing.
CO2. Yeah.
Good. Well, again, good for them, but I think it's our imagination that not only can you travel, you can get somewhere. That's another, like, that happens on Earth, right? But through great challenge, as we all know from our history books, right? Like there are some places you're not meant to go. And just because Shackleton made it once doesn't mean like that everybody did, I mean, it's kind of these things. And it's great. Again, this is the fun part, right? We extrapolate our world to all worlds. But our other worlds don't work like this, right? Like they're not equivalents in any way, right? Just because we landed on the moon doesn't mean we can populate another planet, right? It's kind of like a trick. So I think, anyway, all I'm at is that as we get closer to understanding this sense-making device or whatever that we've made, we need to start teaching it. So I basically taught it that I'm some weird physics nut, right? So it's going to talk to me in physics nut way that it's not going to talk to anybody else in this way because I've already trained it. And I think that's really interesting because then I'm going to be not a physics nut in a minute, and I'm going to be whatever other kind of nut I am, right? Or let's say you're in HR or you're in your position, right? Like you can teach it how to be a AI professional,
Hmm.
right? But it's still this thing of like, are you using that as a proxy? Because the other person you can talk to AI about is just this blathering guy who goes on and on about stuff, right? But you do need feedback, right? And you need support, and I think you get it. So we could go to, and I would love you to talk about your work, because I saw, and I was really happy that Vince compliments you in public. I mean, this is a weird performative thing, but I still think it's interesting because, like, I mentioned Don Norman because I literally criticized his work, and I thought, I know Don Norman, I'm connected to Don Norman. I thought he might read it, but no.
Yeah.
He didn't, and didn't say anything, or at least LinkedIn, I've turned off all my notification that it doesn't tell me anything anymore because it was bugging me so much, right? But this idea that you do need reinforcement, that's really important.
Yeah, yeah. Although in our in the AI context, reinforcement has kind of like a special meaning, right? It's a code
Yes, it
word
does.
for,
It does.
but yeah, I agree. I mean, this is something that um, I think everybody is saying that the natural language will be the ultimate programming language, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like natural language is going to be maybe the ultimate mathematician, right? And kind of, yeah, I tend to agree with that. And but then what's going to be the next stage, right? So some of the sci-fi writers that I know kind of tackled this, right? And once those kind of like making sense engines have the capability to talk to each other in a kind of like an autonomous fashion, because everything that we do is basically question answer right now, right? Like you type your prompt, you get some sort of a response, right? And then you type another prompt, right? So it's not like you are allowing the system to kind of do, oh, the system is going to kind of be maybe low on questions, at midnight. So it's going to come back to your questions, and it will munch on those, maybe not, for 5 seconds, to produce a quick answer, but we'll kind of start looping over it for a few hours during the low utilization period, right? So once that happens, right, and then there is going to be another maybe system kind of like network to it, and it's going to be this system is going to ask that system a question because it may be trained on different data sets. Once this starts happening, then the natural language is not going to be the only language, because there is going to be that conversation between the AIs that is going to take over the networks, and they will kind of probably invent their own conversational vector embedding kind of representation that we will have no idea about, because it's kind of like disassembling machine code. So there's kind of like a few things that will be happening in a couple of years. And what I'm doing with Vince is this kind of like the first step. Like, okay, I said something, like maybe to your point, like I'm writing a physics paper. Are my questions kind of optimal given of what the AI knows, and given maybe some context, maybe a few things that I have, like maybe a few papers. So can we optimize a little bit my contribution as a human to that thing? And yeah, the answer is yes, we can do that, because we have some sort of a rubric of what we want to accomplish, right? So you can kind of explicitly state that, right? You can kind of define the process, maybe imperfectly, but still, right? You can say, hey, I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to give you maybe 2 papers, as context, two scientific papers as a context, right? And then you kind of run this thing through the AI, and then what comes out is maybe the AI was going to say, hey, those 2 papers were really not relevant. I mean, I need 3 papers, and here's the domain name from, maybe it's math, right? I gave it physics, but it really looks, I have not enough knowledge on math. So you see now the second loop is going to be a significant improvement, right? So automating that is really something that, that is going to be a big thing, and it's not a difficult thing to do, because we have all the tools that we need to do that.
I mean, I like it because now I'm starting to think why I might feel more confident, even though I am a novice, is I'm an information architect, right? So the thing is, there's always architecture. That's the point. Like, it started with a text box. It started like Google. And just because I happen to know how Google works, right, which is very complicated, but it does have a model, right, of how it sorts its lists. Right? It has it has an algorithm, and that algorithm is as in any algorithm, it's just counting something, right? It's not clever. It's not weighting. It's just, well, it is weighting, but you know what I mean? It's a very binary thing. That's all. Now that we get into this new model, like you said, that's much different. It speaks in floats. Remember the end of 2001? It's full of stars. See, it's full of floats. Right? And it's the same incomprehensibility, right? Like, it's just a bunch of floats, right? Like, that don't mean anything to you, but they're very powerful for its own whatevering, right? Like, it's like our biology. We don't care about how our brain works, but it's pretty weird, and I don't get it at all, right? Like, nobody does. I guess it's something to do with electricity. Beats me, right? We just know that it somehow functions, sort of, until it's damaged or whatever. And it needs to be fed things. And we said our bandwidth, what's that term? Actually, there's probably like a Bayesian term, right? Of like our ability to take in new ideas is bandwidth limited.
Well, I think it's the Mike Dane rule, right? Not more than 3, right?
Yes, no more than 3, honestly. That's my biggest reason I got some readers. I'm like, it's not 10 things, it's only 3 things. But well, I guess to your point is I like this idea that there's going to be architectural needs. That's all. Like you said, you're going to need to plug and play, because humans are constantly context switching, because the problems you have with what to do for dinner are not the same as how do you solve a basic theory in physics, right? But this is going to certainly not confuse a model, but it's not going to know how to handle these, let's just say, well, it's trying now, right? It's trying to have MCPs. It's trying to have like a context window. I noticed finally ChatGPT. Why am I forgetting the name of this? Yeah, it just has now a project concept. You see what I mean? Like, this is where you start to, because I will tell you the magic, if you want to know, it's our magic. The reason why the people who got hired are Chinese, I think, is that whenever I go to my nice, friendly, really enthusiastic GPT to talk, like, it's really nice about everything and just thinks I'm the best, right? So I enjoy this. And then what I do is I go over to Claude and I'm like, hey, here, I got to this thing. And then it's like, yeah, but you really have kind of missed the boat here, here, and here. So this is sort of my graduate advisor is really happy, always is really good. Then I go to my professor and it's like, well, you really never thought about this, right? Okay, once I get those 2 things together, I take it to DeepSeek. And DeepSeek will rip you a new one. Like, it's pretty intense, and I really appreciate it too, because it is going to like tell you all the things wrong with it, which then I have to go back to GPT, right? And I have to start to redo this and da 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 da. And honestly, you know, because I still had the core idea, it was fine. And the core idea, by the way, is right and explains the entire universe. So just so you know, right?
Yeah,
I figured it out.
It's a little small project, you know. I mean, I'm interested what's going to be the next one, because you know you have to progress from that.
The next one I've already written, but it's where I don't have any proof, right? I have to actually prove something, but I told you last week I started to get the GPS correlation thing. You know, I'm trying to get experimental, but I had to rewrite Newton's laws without geometry, man. I mean, how did I know that that's what these scientists want to hear? Oh, but by the way, I have published this to the Annals of Physics, so we'll see what happens. If I get
Yeah.
any, if I get any
But with
readers.
but with GPS, you're not gonna escape triangles. There's always triangles in there. So
Remember
gonna have
resonance, man. No, it's all frequencies. It's all frequencies. That's it. Anyway.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
but what I meant is I'm patting myself on the back a little bit about taking different models to do different things, and then and then ultimately putting them all in a RAG situation, right? So then I can start to say, what does all this mean? Because when you have hundreds of pages of notes, I mean, this is the scalability problem. And I start thinking like, it's no wonder people can't get crap done, right? We're not that scalable and we get tired easily, but we're very intuitively, we're in tune, if you so know what I mean. Like we know when things are going well and we keep doing it. So these flow things, right? Like when Michael Jordan is playing well, he is not even playing basketball anymore, right? Or when Tadej Pogacar is, doing a time trial toward the end, he just seems to have all the energy needed to go up to 60 miles per hour, right? Like I'm like, how do you just rode you just rode like 30 miles and now you have a bunch of reserve energy left, right? Like that just seems impossible, but somehow, that's why humans are so awesome, right? Like somehow we could manage to, you know, sit there and think about this and then just decide that energy is equal to matter times the speed of light. Like you just came up with that, man. Like there's nothing there to hint that that would be true, right? Like nothing. It was just something that bothered you. And it's like, okay, right? Like you were bothered by Maxwell, right? You didn't see this as an answer. This was just another puzzle. And, just because we can launch ships and navigate the globe easier, all of this was just so that we could go north and south on the globe because we really had such a hard time doing that. We could only go east and west because of the Earth's rotation, right? Like it was really hard to do any sort of possible navigation because you just didn't know where the heck you were. There was no signpost to help you along the way, kind of, right? Now that we have GPS, but remember they're all normalized. Anyway, long story short, all I meant is, yay, humans, we're cool. The technology that we have now, I think, is about building this institutional memory, right? And in a sense, we've been doing that in SaaS, but for a while, right? Like Salesforce is how you sell stuff. Okay, you know what I mean? They came up with the model. You bug people and ask them to buy things, I mean, or whatever, right? Like but it codified that so that you as a business don't have to go through all that work, right? And SAP says, we'll run payroll and your finances, right? You don't have to know, you don't have to invent the system that handles all the EBITDA calculations and all the, whatever. And then, Intuit decides that we don't have to ever have a decent tax law that lets us file taxes easily, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like they all figure it out and they codify things so that we don't have to. And that's fine, but I still think, what you just said is to build real value, you do have to do a lot of unknown things and you have to take a ton of risks. And we should be happy that people want to do that rather than it being sort of optional, right? Oh no, you don't need to build a new phone. Apple and Google have already done that.
yeah.
you know? And it's true, but it's like, well, maybe phones need to be a different thing. I saw a kid the other day with a watch, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea, right? Because they're not going to sit around and phone their friends, but if you want to know where they are and you want to call them, cool, right? And maybe this is
Yeah.
all they really need. And maybe they can even say, what's the capital of Afghanistan or something, right? In their class to if they don't know for a test. I don't know. I'm going into education. That's another topic. In fact, I think I've worn you down as usual.
No, there's tangents.
Now we're
I
at an
think.
hour and I'm still like, I could go on. I could go on. I love this topic, right?
Yeah.
But I do think the architecture, I'll just go back to that's where I think we should focus, right? Because the architecture is still architecture, right? There needs to
Mm.
be layers
Yeah.
and there needs to be ways that these things communicate. So I'm happy, right? It used to just be a text box, and I think now it's going to be architectures. Absolutely. It has to be, you know?
Yeah.
And then we might see this great replacement thing, but I still think that's not because of AI, right? I mean, that's just the way people like to do things. You know, it's the way it always is.
Yeah.
Because the decisions they're making, and I think they're short-sighted as always, because I think people need to learn, and it takes a lot of time to learn how a business works. Honestly, I mean, you've been at San Diego for 3 years.
Yeah, a few
Yeah.
years, and still
Right, and you
don't
still have
know how
no
things
idea
work.
what they do for a living, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, right? Like you're just in this one place. I'm kidding, but right? You don't know anything. I've worked for Northwestern for 12 years. I barely know how they function.
Mm.
Right? Like you're not let in on anything other than
Yeah.
like the big picture stuff. But you know, once you're in it, you might say, "Oh, I didn't know that the job of being a faculty dean is so hard." Because it isn't, because they're lazy. We know, we've worked for them before. They just get other people to do stuff. Sorry, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But
Well, theoretically, right, the job description that is out there, right, should tell you a lot. But practically speaking, right, that job description is never going to be, even 5% of what you are really doing. And yeah, how do you want to handle that, right? I mean, we have an AI system that is handling job descriptions now, but I don't think anybody would want to have like a real feedback into, let's say, crisis that a particular maybe team leader averted, and that description goes into the job official job description of that person. I don't know if this is even something that people would want, right? So then you will have an HR person in a kind of corporate setting that probably knows very little about that job, knows very little about that person who is actually excelling in that job,
yeah,
may know very, very little about people who are not so good in that particular job, but then they are tasked in writing a job description so that they have a new hire or maybe somebody similar or whatever. Right. So yeah, it kind of goes back to everything that we are talking about. Like,
well, actually, let's hold that for next week because we started here, I think, years ago, right? Talking about people and how AI, and jobs, and I think meetings, right, was our big deal. You know, how do people decide stuff or whatever they do? Let's talk about it next week because honestly, I'd like to take my mind away from physics for a minute. And
okay.
and I think I think something like a job description is a perfect model of where you'd need to go with your institution, right? Who works here and what do they do? Is a really interesting question that no organization really asks itself, right? Oh, it doesn't
Yeah.
know. I don't think anyone knows. So let's talk about it next week. Do you mind? I mean, I think it's a
Oh
good
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I'm game, and I want to change my mind. So till next week.
All right. Yes. See you next week. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Jack. Awesome.